Hello, I'm Dr. Len Saputo. I'm the author of Return to Healing. This book is about radical healthcare reform and the future of medicine. It's also an autobiography of my experience in medical training and with over 40 years of clinical practice. We're going to review some of the problems in healthcare, look at radical healthcare reform, and give you some practical solutions. I'd like to introduce you to my wife, Vicki, who's a registered nurse, and without whom this book could not have been written.
And we'll be going through a Return to Healing, chapter by chapter, taking you with us through this personal journey.
In this chapter, we're going to look at the birth of the health medicine movement, what it is, the story of how it developed, and explore some of the challenges it faces to bring it into clinical practice.
Well, the actual complementary alternative medicine movement began in the 60s when Nixon was extending relations with China, and he brought back a film from China. And you were in medical school at the time, and you and your colleagues were watching this movie on TV.
We were stunned. It was incredible. You know, we're these straightforward clinical doctors learning all the practical things and not thinking anything about any kind of complementary and alternative therapy. And all of a sudden they come across and they show us this video of somebody having open chest surgery and eating an orange, and the only anesthetic is acupuncture needles. It blew our minds.
So how did that affect you? How did you feel about that?
Well, I was stunned as everybody else was, but it didn't seem to change the way we acted. We went on as though it never happened. It was sort of like one of those things you see in the circus, and you go, wow, that's amazing, and then you go on as though you didn't know anything about it.
So maybe it was too much, really, to grasp.
It's a paradigm shift to be thinking of that style of practice for the kind of training we've had, and it's taken 45, 50 years for this to make it into the area where we're actually thinking about these things in clinical practice today.
But I think it sunk in somewhere in you, because then later on, I remember I had an acupuncture treatment many years ago, and you were very interested because it was effective, but you still didn't do anything about it. And then when I got really sick, which is mentioned and we talk about in an earlier chapter, and it was really complementary alternative medicine that saved my life. And that made a big difference for you. And I think, too, you wanted to do things to help your patients more. And that was when you thought that integrative, doing it together. So tell us the story about how health medicine came to be.
Well, really, it was all these years of experience in the mainstream that prejudiced me against thinking of alternative styles of practice. But when I started seeing the movie, the video, it woke me up a little. When you got sick, it woke me up a lot. And there were other people who were interested in making the shift as well. And so a lot of us who were thinking about what the new medicine would be got together. And we met in a hotel in San Francisco. There were about 10 of us. And the idea was to coin a term for what the new medicine would be, and we thought of a lot of different approaches.
Who were the types of people that were there? Were they medical doctors, or did they do alternative medicine?
They were mostly people who were physicians who had an open mind and were looking at the new medicine, but also there were people there who were in selling supplements. Somebody owned a supplement company. Some other people were interested in other forms of health care. And together we came up with two words. One, health, because we want to shift the paradigm from disease care to health care. And the other, medicine, but not in the terms of what you'd think of medicine generally as big pharma's work. This was the spirit of medicine, so we thought health medicine would be a good start. Then as we went on with that, I thought of another way to expand the boundaries of this and coined the term integral health medicine, which really takes it to another dimension.
So what's integral?
Integral really means just looking at the context of not only the person's whole self. We're not just looking at body, mind, emotion, and spirit, but we're looking at how that person's whole lifestyle affects them and how everything in the universe affects that lifestyle. That's what integral means. So it's about integral health medicine.
So when you were talking about integral health medicine, I think that you got to a point where you were talking about how it would be really a great idea to have one-stop shopping, so that everybody, like if a patient came to see a healthcare practitioner, that maybe they would all be there together. Mm-hmm. But there seemed like there were roadblocks with complementary alternative medicine.
Yeah.
What were some of those roadblocks?
Well, we got together. Must have been about 50 of us who were interested in forming some kind of center where we all worked together under one roof. And yeah, like you said, one-stop shopping is a great idea because everything's there at your fingertips, and if you want something that's out of the mainstream, it's there. The problem we ran into is how do we actually set up something like that? Would we practice together? How would we practice together? How would we do the billing? How would we be economically stable? What about insurance reimbursement? So we decided to postpone that event because we felt we didn't know enough about it and there weren't enough models around that we could learn from. So we went ahead and started a movement of getting together to study this problem and to learn more about what each of the different kinds of healthcare practitioners did.
And I think there was a little bit of resistance on both sides of the fence. Like the medical doctors weren't real acceptive of alternative methods, and some of the complementary alternative practitioners were kind of afraid to make referrals because they thought they might lose some of their patients.
Well, when you look at the bottom line of what's happening, a lot of it's economics. There's a monopoly on the part of the economics in the mainstream, the medical doctors. Alternative and complementary doctors don't have big practices generally. They aren't, and it's because they're not reimbursed by insurance companies generally. And so there's a tension. Plus, there's a kind of arrogance about each discipline. The mainstream people think the complementary and alternative medicine people don't know that much. The complementary and alternative medicine people think they know better than the mainstream and that there are problems in it. And of course, everybody's right. There are problems with every particular discipline. There's enough disease to go around, but there are not enough solutions. We should be working together.
And then in the 90s, the National Center for Complementary Alternative Medicine, NCCAM, they got together and decided that they were going to have a group, I guess, within the NIH.
Exactly.
And they were going to get funds to try to help out CAM, we call it, for complementary alternative medicine.
Yeah.
But what happened with this? Because I know there was like $30 million that were
billion
that were allocated for CAM.
No, there were $30 billion for the National Institutes of Health's budget.
Oh, not for CAM, because CAM only got like about 1% of that.
Not even that. At the beginning in 1991, for the Office of Alternative Medicine, basically they got $2 million budget, which is nothing. You can't do anything with that. It's not enough money. And then, over the next couple of decades, by 2008, that budget had risen to about $130 million. But you're still talking about less than 0.5% of the National Institutes of Health budget for all kinds of research, because that's a $30 billion budget.
So I guess this is why there's some controversy about whether they're trying to really help CAM or sabotage
it's
it.
trying to really just give it some kind of voice. But there's a strong proponent within the medical profession, which is what really runs the National Institutes of Health, to stop complementary and alternative therapy research or preventive medicine research. So we're still in the place where it's stuck. There's not a level playing field. So we need to move this along and start doing research, but it has to come from the public, because it hasn't come from the medical people, nor has it come from the National Institutes of Health.
So also in the 90s, to be exact, 1994, that was when we started the Health Medicine Forum, and you invited several people that you knew to come into our living room to have a discussion about it. There were MDs and there were healthcare practitioners of multiple disciplines that all got together to talk about how we could work together.
That really rapidly expanded because there was a lot of interest. I think by that time, the whole CAM movement that started in the 60s was coming to some fruition, and people wanted to start learning about how they could work together. Within about 6 weeks or maybe 3 months of the time that we had that initial meeting in our living room, we had 90 people who had formed the nidus from which the Health Medicine Forum was born in 1995.
What was really kind of exciting, and you were eager to learn just about anything that you could about other disciplines. Mm-hmm. And everybody else was interested as well. So it was kind of like this show and tell where people would talk about what they did. Mm-hmm. And so the beginning was learning. And then we started having panel discussions at the meetings where practitioners of multiple disciplines would be on the panel, and we would talk about all kinds of different diseases and how they would handle it. And then we started doing it with patients, and then we started getting demonstrations and working on one another, and then it developed into healing panels, or healing circles, I mean.
Yeah, this whole process was a wonderful exploration that gave us the opportunity to learn